let's talk about living a godly, obedient life before God, and a life that's a blessing to others and to yourself. You and I are not going to be successful at living a holy life before God, at being obedient to God, until we recognize that we've got to deal with the heart and not just the head. I trust that in looking at this video so far, you've noticed my coffee pot illustration back here, and we're going to be getting to that in a minute, because it's really nice actually how man will invent things that are so useful in explaining how spiritual processes work. And the old drip coffee pot is just a great example of something that helps us understand the difference between the heart and the head. Now, when we read the Bible, one of the things we have to come to grips with is that the vocabulary of the Scripture is God's vocabulary. God had it authored the way He did, and He meant it to communicate very accurate truths. That's why having a good translation is so important. Now, if we go to Mark chapter 7, we have Jesus Christ talking about being able to live a holy life before God. And here's what He says. Mark chapter 7, verse 20, reading from the New International Version, Christ went on, "What comes out of a man is what makes him unclean, for from within, out of men's hearts, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and make a man unclean." Now, when we look at this list of evils, these are things, sexual immorality, envy, slander, arrogance. These are things that show up in my life. I'm sure they show up in your life, and I don't like them. I don't like them, and I'd like to get rid of them. But Jesus Christ said they come out of the heart. And what you and I need to come to grips with is, if we're going to be obedient to God, then we've got to recognize that we've got to deal with the heart and not just the head. In a battle between the head and the heart, what's in our heart will always win. I learned this big time in spades, reading along a number of years ago now in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 4 in the New International Version. I'd read the King James for years. I was making a shift to the New International Version, and when I got to Ephesians 5:4, I read, "Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving." And I read that word obscenity, and I was like, really? I didn't know that. I had a foul mouth at the time. And the King James says, "Neither should there be filthiness." I never connected that filthiness meant obscenity. I did all the lexical work and found out the New International Version is right. So in my head, I made a decision. I'm not going to use obscenity anymore. There it is, done. I made the decision in my head. You know how long it lasted? Let's just say not very long. Why? Because I still had anger in my heart. I still had malice in my heart. I still had various things in my heart that when something came up that bothered me, out came obscenity. Somebody comes up in traffic and cuts me off in traffic and I'm offended. And out comes obscenity, this sin against God. Boy, what a startling revelation. Wait a minute. I had made up my mind I wasn't going to do this. I made up my mind I wasn't going to have angry outbursts. How come I kept having them? Because I never dealt with the heart. Here's David. Boy, David in Psalm 51 verse 10, "Create in me a clean heart," he prays to God. Yeah, that's what we want. See, if the heart is clean, then nothing is down there to drive out. Why couldn't the unbelievers, the devil, the Pharisees, even the Roman soldiers, why couldn't they force Jesus Christ to sin? Why couldn't they force Him to use obscenity? They lied about Him. They slandered Him. They beat Him. They mocked Him. They ridiculed Him. They did everything that anybody does to you or me, and we come out with a string of obscenities and we're all mad and we're running around justifying ourselves and our actions. Jesus Christ didn't do any of that. And they did a lot worse to him than they've done to me. How come I've got this anger problem and Christ didn't? Because he had a clean heart. And you and I need to realize we are not going to be able to obey God until we realize we have a heart problem, not just a head problem. It's just not a knowledge problem, which is why Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for it's the wellspring of life. Okay, great, I'm going to guard my heart. How do I do it? Here comes the coffee pot example. Because, you know, the Bible makes it very clear that we can't just reach into our heart and cleanse it. I can't just say, oh, look, anger in my heart, and go in there and take it out. No more anger. The only access the immediate access I have to my heart is through my mind. What I keep in my mind. No wonder 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5 says, we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. And that's where you and I need to be diligent. It's going to take a lot of work. But we have to control what we watch in our minds. We have to control that. Think about the coffee pot. Here's the coffee pot. This is the heart of the coffee pot right here. The coffee. That's the heart of the pot. What we put up here, this is like our head. And if you put decaf coffee up here, you're going to have decaf coffee down here. If you put regular coffee up here, you're going to have regular coffee down there. If you put tea, powdered tea up here, you're going to have tea down here. If whatever you put in the head is going to drip into the heart over time. By the way, if you put pure water up here all the time, pure water will flow down here and eventually there'll be an overflow and what's in the heart will come out. You see, the coffee pot's just kind of exactly like us. You know, we've got to decide what we hold, what we put up here, because it's going to affect down here. And sometimes we play fast and loose with the things of God. We don't bring every thought captive. You know, I know as a guy, especially here, we're going into the summer season, you know, there's a lot of women that are wearing less clothes than maybe I would like them to wear, but the fact of the matter is it's my mind and I've got to control myself. And so it's about what do I allow myself to hold in my head? Or if somebody cuts me off in traffic, what do I allow myself to hold in my head? Do I them out in my mind going down the road even if I don't say anything with my mouth? Or do I pray for them and bless them like Jesus Christ? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They're living a destructive lifestyle and they're completely unaware of it. Have I got compassion for the human race? Or do I react in anger and allow that anger to sit in my head because of what someone did to me? You and I need to realize that if we've got a problem with anger, envy, drunkenness, maliciousness, arrogance, it's a heart problem. But we're not going to cure it by just directly cleansing our heart. We can't do that. We're going to cure it by watching what we have in our mind. And I would say that by and large, Christians are pretty lazy about watching their minds. There's a lot of stuff that we allow that, frankly, we shouldn't allow. We shouldn't allow it. We should be more serious about what goes into our minds. You know, I've had to really restrict what I watch on TV and the movies that I watch, because a lot of the movies have gratuitous sex, they have lots of foul language. What you watch, see, we just put all this stuff right in our old mind and we're going to expect that it won't change our heart. Baloney. If we stick it in our mind, it's going to go down into the heart. That's what is going to happen. Let's do what Proverbs says to do. Let's guard our heart, for out of it are the issues of our life.